Can you tell something about making choices, e.g. when there are two options and you do not know what to choose? You do know what to choose, but your mind doesn't want to choose what you want to choose. Or your story doesn't want to choose. So on a deep level, there is a knowing of what wants to happen. There is this flow. And then the mind, or the separate person, or whatever it is, looks back at that, it's not conscious, and then starts to tell another story of what it wants to happen. So in other words, there is no choice. There's an appearance of choice. So it appears as if you make a choice, like you choose between going out for dinner or staying at home and watching TV. But if you unpick everything, you'll realize that this is simply energy expressing itself. Energy or life expressing itself. And it builds all these building blocks until there's finally somebody at the end of it telling itself a story. I chose to stay in. But really there were thousands of effects which created that choice to be made. But the reason why you struggle to make choice is because your body and your thinking mind is out of line. So you just need to line them up again. And the reason that the body and the thinking mind become out of line is because of this separate self, this separate energy, which claims to be a story in time. And this person that you believe yourself to be, you also believe that that person has to live a particular life with particular stories and particular outcomes. And normally that's conditioned onto you from society and your parents. And some of that's relevant. There's a point that there's a reason why our society conditions us, and some of it's relevant, but it becomes so thick that you become too much out of line with your body. So your body has a response to a choice, and then your mind might have a total different response, and then this is where the conflict and the confusion arises. And the reason they're so different is because of this conditioning. So you just need to begin to balance up your thoughts more with your body. And the way you do that is you just become conscious of what you're thinking, because a lot of the time we're not conscious of what we think about. We think we are, but we're only conscious of the very end part. So say if you go into a coffee shop and you meet somebody new, and in meeting them it brings up a particular fear, but you're not conscious of that fear. So what it does is it makes you want to give to them. So you keep complimenting them or telling them how wonderful they are, or all these different things on the surface level. But underneath, what's happening is you feel afraid. And there's no recognition of that fear. And the fear is appearing in the body. So the body's experiencing fear. But your mind is telling you how much you like that person, how much you want to give to them. And then the body is out of line with itself. There's nothing wrong with feeling that fear. And maybe that fear has a deeper element to it. It reminds you of your teacher at school, or it reminds you of this, or it reminds you of that. But these things are out of line. So you just need to line them up better, and then the choices will flow easier. They'll still maybe be contemplating the choices, but at the moment the reason why choice becomes so hard is there's too much of a gap between it. So you just need to understand better what the body's saying, and then what the mind, the thinking mind, is saying. what we've become in our society often is just walking brains. It's just all about what we think, what we think, what we think, what we think, what we think. Bloop, 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 bloop. It could happen the opposite way as well, that you really detest the person that stood in front of you, and you're like thinking all these bad things about them. And deep down, when you explore, you find out you really like them, and you just feel vulnerable. And your response to that was so just understand what's happening, and know that that one that understands isn't a you. You is appearing in every moment, but isn't actually the experiencer, or it isn't appearing in every moment, it's coming and going in the moment. And who you are is the experiencer. On the ultimate level, you are no thing and everything. This emptiness experiencing itself as everything, as fullness. So right now, there's somebody actually that's listening to the talk, and they present themselves as if they really dislike me. And they use every excuse. I know the person because I just saw them try to write me a message, but I blocked it because I'm not here to be emotionally puked on, like people's unconscious emotional puking. And actually, I think that what happens is that when I speak, it touches them in a very vulnerable, loving place. And that makes them feel very vulnerable. So what they do is then, in the mind, that's too much to cope with. So they attack, and they use all types of things to attack and dislike. And I think really what's happening is that when I'm speaking, there's something that's being fulfilled in them, which is making them feel love and absolute vulnerability. And this is too overwhelming. So it actually appears as hatred. That I got the teachings wrong, that I'm teaching wrong people, that I'm doing bad things, that I'm leading people astray, whatever it is their mind is saying, just from previous conversations that they've said. So what they do is then they go to other speakers, they listen to other speakers, and they use that information to try to come at me. But why are they listening to a talk where they believe the talker is leading people astray? And why do they repetitively listen? I know in their argument, because I've heard them throw lots of stuff at me before, their argument is because I'm trying to save other people from you. Really? Are you sure if you go inside your body, rather than just going with the streams of abuse towards me, just go into the body and feel what's happening? When I was younger, it used to happen to me, to particular teachers. I used to feel when they spoke this immense love. And I actually disliked them for it, because I thought they're selling me something that's not true. And it's something that I deeply wanted, was this love. And I felt like it was like a false promise, like those romantic movies from the 80s that I'd been brought up on. And I thought, this is a false promise. I can't listen to them because they're offering me something that doesn't exist, and my hopes are going to get up, and I don't want my hopes to get up. And what I wanted was that love of what life is. And I could hear it. I heard it in the romantic movies when I was a child and used to watch them in the 80s, and then I heard it in these speakers. But it felt too painful. I couldn't be separated from that love again. I couldn't hope that there was that love. I couldn't do it, so my response was that they were bad and I rejected them. And what I did was I went to teachers that were a lot more colder and intellectual and theoretical about it. Not all of the teachers, but this was one strategy, because that made me feel more safe. It didn't offer me something which was like a lover that could potentially go. It offered me a colder facts. I sometimes think this is why people get into negative thinking, because they're too afraid of positive thinking. Like, it's easier in a way to rely on negativity than it is to rely on positivity in the thinking mind. But then what it does, as the mind begins to invest more and more into negativity, is it produces more and more depressive chemicals in the brain, and it gives the feelings and emotions of depression. And really what it was at the very beginning, why that thinking mind, why that separate entity did that, was because it was so afraid of feeling vulnerability, feeling love, and being totally vulnerable to life itself. Totally vulnerable to not knowing, totally vulnerable to innocence, to other people's actions. So if other actions are mean, totally vulnerable to that feeling of being hurt. But what we do is we build all these strategies to push away that hurt, that rejection. And all you need to do is feel hurt and rejected. I've never been more human than what I am now. If you have some idea that you become superhuman and you never feel vulnerability or sadness or fear, then to me, that's totally wrong. It's all about being totally vulnerable. It's not about being some non-human person that doesn't feel all these things. And in that vulnerability, in all of it, that's where the freedom is. Totally vulnerable to what's happening.